I did it because he was my brother. And that's what brothers do. My name is Frank Calloway. I'm 64 years old. I live in the same house in Dayton, Ohio, where my father taught me to change a tire, and my mother made Sunday roast every week without fail. After I retired from 28 years as an electrician with the county, I thought the hardest chapter of my life was behind me. Bad joints, a modest pension, a quiet street, a garden I never quite got around to planting. That was supposed to be it. That was supposed to be enough. Then my brother Ray went out on a fishing boat on a Tuesday morning in April and never came back. Ray was 51, 12 years younger than me, which made people think we were only half brothers, but we weren't. Same mother, same father, same kitchen table where we ate breakfast for the better part of 2 decades. The age gap just meant I was more like a second father to him at times. I taught him to drive. I co-signed his first apartment. When his wife Carol was pregnant and they couldn't make rent, I lent them money without asking for it back. That's just how it was. You don't keep score with family. The fishing trip was supposed to be a weekend thing. Ray went out with a buddy named Hector on Hector's boat. There was a storm. The boat capsized. Hector made it to shore. Ray didn't. They found the boat. They found Ray's jacket floating near the rocks at the south end of the lake. They never found Ray. After 6 weeks, the county declared him legally dead. Carol was 38 years old with a 9-year-old daughter named Sophie, and no income beyond the part-time bookkeeping work she picked up here and there. Ray's life insurance paid out $19,000. That money was gone in 4 months. Carol told me it went to back rent, medical bills, Sophie's school fees. I didn't ask for documentation. She was my brother's wife. I believed her. That's when I started sending the money. $1,200 a month. My pension was $2,200. That left me with $1,000 to cover utilities, groceries, gas, and every other thing life decided to throw at me. I sold the extra truck I'd been keeping in the driveway. I canceled the cable package I'd had since 1997. I started eating a lot of eggs because eggs are cheap and they fill you up. I'm not telling you any of this for sympathy. I'm telling you because I want you to understand the arithmetic of what I gave away. Carol lived 40 minutes from me in a rental house on the edge of Springboro. I drove out on the 1st of every month and handed her an envelope. She always answered the door quickly, like she'd been watching for my car. She'd take the envelope, smile at me, tell me how much it meant to her, how Sophie had said just the other day that she wished she could thank Uncle Frank for everything he did. Then she'd say she was in the middle of something, and she'd close the door and I'd drive home. It never bothered me then. I thought she was grieving. I thought she was busy. I thought I was doing the right thing by not asking for more than she had to give. I did this for 3 years and 4 months. The woman who changed everything was not a detective or a private investigator or a police officer. She was my neighbor Estelle, 73 years old, 5 feet tall, and the most observant person I have ever met in my life. Estelle had lived next door to me for 11 years. Her husband had passed 6 years back. She spent her mornings tending a flower garden that made the rest of the block look embarrassed, and her afternoons watching everything from her front porch with a glass of sweet tea and absolutely no apology for it. One Thursday in August, she knocked on my door at 7 in the evening. I was eating leftover soup and watching the news. When I opened the door, she wasn't smiling. "Come sit with me a minute," she said. On the porch, we sat in her 2 rocking chairs. She had her tea. She offered me one and I said no thank you, and she looked at me for a long time before she said anything. "You still driving out to Carol's every month?" "I am," I said. "I need you to do something," Estelle said, "and I need you not to ask me why. Not yet. I need you to go to Carol's on a day she isn't expecting you. A weekday, afternoon. Park down the street and wait. Just watch for a little while. Can you do that for me?" My stomach did something unpleasant. I've known Estelle long enough to understand that she does not ask for things without a reason. She is not a gossip. She is not dramatic. If she was asking me to do this, she had already seen something she wished she could unsee. I drove out to Springboro on a Wednesday. I parked 3 houses down from Carol's rental, and I sat in my truck with the windows cracked, and I waited. At 1:30 in the afternoon, a silver sedan pulled into Carol's driveway. A man got out. He was wearing a gray t-shirt and work pants, Medium build, maybe 190 pounds. He had a beard now, which he hadn't had before. His hair was shorter. He was wearing a baseball cap pulled down, but I knew the way he slapped the roof of the car twice before he closed the door. Ray had done that his whole life, every car he'd ever owned. He said it was good luck. I'd teased him about it for years. My brother walked up to the front door of his widow's house and let himself in with a key. I sat in that truck for 2 hours. I don't remember most of it. I remember a dog barking somewhere and a kid riding a bicycle past and the sun moving across my windshield. At some point, my hands stopped shaking. At some point, something that had been soft inside me went very hard and very quiet, and I understood that the world was not the same world it had been 2 hours ago and would never be again. I drove home and knocked on Estelle's door. She sat me down at her kitchen table and she told me what she knew. Her granddaughter had gotten married in Springboro in the spring. Estelle had stayed with a friend who lived 6 blocks from Carol's rental. One afternoon, while she was walking, she saw a man come out of the house who moved like Ray. Same posture, same way of dropping his shoulder when he was carrying something heavy. She thought she was imagining it, but it nagged at her. So she went back on 2 more days that same week. She saw him again. She followed him at a distance to a gas station. When he turned around to check the pump, she saw his face from 20 feet away. She was certain. She'd been sitting on it for 3 weeks, trying to figure out how to tell me. She said she was sorry she didn't come sooner. I told her she had nothing to be sorry for. I went home and I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark and I thought about 3 years and 4 months. I thought about $45,000. I thought about the truck I sold. I thought about Sophie, 9 years old, who I had sent birthday cards to and called on holidays and thought of as my niece. I thought about the last time I'd seen Ray before the boat trip, how we'd had lunch at a diner near his house and split a piece of pie, and he'd said, "Frank, you're the only person in this world who's never let me down." By morning, I had decided what to do. I found a private investigator through a retired cop I'd worked with years ago on a county electrical project. His name was Dennis Varley, former sheriff's deputy, 17 years. He looked like someone's grandfather, which I later understood was a professional asset. I gave him everything I knew, and $2,000, and I told him I needed evidence, not suspicion. Evidence. Dennis was methodical in a way that I found deeply reassuring. He called me every 3 days with updates. He never speculated. He only reported what he had confirmed. Within 2 weeks, he gave me a picture that explained everything. Ray was living under the name Calvin Marsh. He had a driver's license, a social security number, a bank account, and a lease on an apartment in Miamisburg, 18 miles from where his wife was cashing my envelopes. He was not alone. He was living with a woman named Patrice Odom, who worked as a dental hygienist and had no idea, as far as Dennis could determine, that the man she was living with was not who he said he was. She appeared to be a genuine victim in this, which I made a note of. The capsizing had not been an accident. Dennis laid it out in a folder across my kitchen table. Ray had been in serious financial trouble for years. Not gambling, like you might expect. Business debt. He'd invested money into a friend's auto parts venture that had collapsed spectacularly, taking $60,000 of borrowed money with it. Some of those lenders were not the kind of people you explained your situation to. So Ray, with Carol's knowledge and active participation, had staged his death. Hector, the friend on the boat, had been paid $1,500 to say what he said to the police. The jacket in the water had been placed there the night before. Ray had walked away from his life, his debt, his daughter, and his brother, and started a new one. Carol had collected the life insurance. Carol had collected my money. Carol had been sending Ray a cut every month from a second account Dennis had found through some means he didn't fully explain to me. Carol, it turned out, had also been seeing Hector for the better part of 2 years before the boat trip. The whole arrangement had been built to free 2 people from a life they had both quietly decided they were finished with. The part I wasn't prepared for was Sophie. Sophie had been sent to live with Carol's aunt in Kettering shortly after Ray's disappearance. Carol had told everyone the girl was having trouble in school and needed a quieter environment. The truth, as Dennis reported it gently but plainly, was that neither Carol nor Ray had much interest in raising her. Sophie was an inconvenience to an exit plan. She was 9 years old and she was an inconvenience to her own parents. I had to pull my truck over on the way home from Dennis's office. I sat in a parking lot outside a hardware store, and I put my hands over my face and I stayed that way for a while. Dennis also gave me a recording. He had placed a device, and he did not specify where, and I did not ask. He gave me 8 minutes of audio from the apartment in Miamisburg. In the recording, Ray and Patrice were talking in the kitchen. Patrice asked him if everything was all right because he seemed distracted. Ray said he was fine, just thinking. She asked what about. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Frank's been sending money to Carol every month for 3 years. My brother doesn't know a thing, just keeps sending it." Patrice said, "That's terrible." And Ray laughed. Not a short, uncomfortable laugh. A real one, easy and relaxed. He said, "Frank always had more heart than sense, even when we were kids." I used to count on that. I listened to that recording 4 times. After the first time, I felt sick. After the second time, I felt something colder than sick. By the 4th time, I felt very calm and very clear about exactly what I was going to do. I went to the Dayton Police Department on a Thursday morning and asked to speak with someone in fraud. I was directed to a detective named Louise Garrity, who was thorough and patient and did not seem surprised by anything I told her. She reviewed Dennis's folder. She listened to the recording. She called the county where the death had been filed and made several notes. Then, she looked at me across her desk and said, "Mr. Calloway, this is going to take a little time to build correctly. Are you prepared to be patient?" I told her I'd been patient for 3 years and 4 months. A few more weeks wasn't going to break me. Detective Garrity was as good as her word. She coordinated with the Springboro Police and the county sheriff. Hector, when approached, took less than 40 minutes to give a full statement in exchange for a reduced charge. He had apparently been wrestling with it for 3 years, and the wrestling had not been going well. Dennis's file, combined with Hector's statement and the bank records from Carol's second account, built a case that Detective Garrity described as, and I am quoting her directly here, unusually tidy. Ray and Carol had made one mistake that investigators said sealed everything. They had continued communicating on a cell phone Ray had registered under Calvin Marsh's name, but using a carrier linked to an old email address that was tied to his real identity. 3 years of text messages, logistics, money transfers, arguments about Sophie that were as cold as anything I've ever read. In one exchange, Carol asked Ray when he was planning to tell Sophie the truth about any of it. Ray's reply was 2 words. "Don't bother. Don't bother." I thought about that for a long time. On a Thursday evening 3 weeks later, I drove out to Springboro for the last time. I parked in the driveway. I walked up to the door and knocked. Carol answered. She was wearing a cardigan and holding a mug, and she looked, for just a moment, genuinely glad to see me. "You're early this month," she said. I told her I was in the area and thought I'd drop by. I handed her the envelope. She took it and thanked me and said Sophie had apparently made the honor roll at her new school, which was a lie I now recognized as reflexive and automatic. I said that was wonderful. I asked if she needed anything else. She said, "No, Frank, you've done more than enough, you really have." I said goodnight, and I got in my truck, and I drove away. The next morning, Detective Garrity and 4 officers went to Carol's house at 8 a.m. They went to the apartment in Miamisburg at the same time with a second team. I was not there for either. I had asked Garrity if I could be present, and she had said, gently but firmly, that it was better if I wasn't. She called me at 9:17. "Carol's in custody," she said. "Your brother was detained at the apartment. He tried to tell the officers they had the wrong man." The detective paused. Then she said, "He stopped insisting when they showed him your photograph." Ray was charged with fraud, identity theft, filing a false death report, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and 2 additional charges I am not a lawyer and cannot fully explain. Carol was charged with fraud, conspiracy, insurance fraud, and child endangerment. Hector received a suspended sentence in exchange for his cooperation. Patrice Odom was not charged. She had known nothing. The trial took 8 months. I sat in the gallery for most of it. I watched my brother sit at the defense table in a suit that made him look smaller than I remembered. and I listened to an attorney argue that Ray had been under extreme financial duress and had made a desperate choice that he deeply regretted. The attorney said Ray had written letters of remorse. He had found faith. He was not the man he had been. The jury took 4 hours. Ray received 9 years in federal prison. Carol received 6. The court ordered restitution of the money Carol had received from me, though I was told by Detective Garrity that collecting it would be a slow and uncertain process. I told her I wasn't counting on it. I hadn't been counting on much of anything lately, except what I knew for certain. And what I knew for certain was that Sophie was still living with Carol's aunt in Kettering, and that someone needed to go see her. Carol's aunt was named Margaret. She was 67, recently widowed herself, and she opened the door to me with an expression that told me she had been expecting this visit for some time and was not sure whether to be relieved or afraid. I told her I wasn't there to take anything from her. I told her I just wanted to see Sophie. She let me in without another word. Sophie was in the back room doing homework at a small desk near the window. She looked up when Margaret knocked on the doorframe. She had Ray's coloring and her mother's eyes, and a way of holding her pencil that I recognized immediately because it was the same grip Ray had used since 2nd grade, thumb tucked under, which our mother had tried to correct for years and never managed. "Your Uncle Frank," Sophie said. It wasn't a question. She said it the way children state things they have been thinking about for a while. I said I was. She looked at me carefully for a moment. Then she said, "Do you know where my mom is?" Margaret had told her Carol was away dealing with some legal problems. Sophie was not a child who accepted incomplete answers easily. I could see that in the way she watched my face while she waited for me to respond. I sat down in the chair across from her desk. I told her that her mother was going to be away for a long time. I told her it wasn't Sophie's fault and that it had nothing to do with her, and that some things in adult life become very complicated and very serious, and that what mattered right now was that Sophie was safe and doing well in school, and that people who loved her knew where she was. She asked about her father. I had thought about this moment for weeks. I had talked to a counselor about it. I had no good answer that was also honest, and no honest answer that wasn't going to hurt her. In the end, I told her that her father had also made some serious mistakes, and that those mistakes had serious consequences, and that when she was older, if she wanted to know more, I would tell her everything. I told her that none of it was her fault either. I told her that twice, because the counselor had told me to. Sophie looked at her homework for a moment. Then she said, "Are you going to disappear too?" It hit me the way those things hit you when you're not ready, which you never are. I told her no. I told her I was not going anywhere. She nodded. She didn't seem entirely convinced, which was fair. The adults in her life had not given her much reason to be. It took 5 months to work out the custody arrangement. Margaret was willing but tired. I was the closest blood relative on Ray's side, who was in a position to act. My house had a second bedroom I'd been using as storage. I cleaned it out over 3 weekends. I painted it a light blue because Sophie, when I asked her on the phone what her favorite color was, said she liked the color of the sky right before it got dark. I took that to mean blue and hoped I was right. I was wrong. She told me when she arrived that her favorite color was actually green. But she said the blue was nice anyway. She said it in the careful, diplomatic way that children use when they are trying not to make adults feel bad, and it made me want to laugh and cry at the same time. Sophie started 4th grade in September at the school 3 blocks from my house. She was quiet the first few weeks, in the way that children are quiet when they are measuring a new place against the places that hurt them. I drove her every morning because the buses ran early, and the walk was longer than I wanted her doing alone. I packed her lunch badly at first. She ate it without complaint for 2 weeks before she told me, gently, that she didn't actually like mustard. I said she could have told me sooner. She said she didn't want to be a bother. That stopped me cold. 9 years old and already managing herself around the feelings of the adults responsible for her. I crouched down in the kitchen so I was at her level, and I told her that nothing she needed was a bother to me. I told her that's not how this was going to work. She looked at me for a long moment and I could see her deciding whether to believe me, and I understood that belief, for her, was something that had to be earned slowly, and I was prepared to earn it. Estelle came over on Sundays. She and Sophie took to each other immediately in the way that old women and lonely children sometimes do. Something transactional and genuine at the same time. Estelle wanting to be needed, and Sophie needing someone with patience and a long view. They started a container garden on my back porch in October. Too late in the season for most things, but Estelle said that was fine. They were just practicing. Sophie wrote their plans in a notebook she kept on the kitchen counter. Tomatoes, beans, marigolds along the edge. She said marigolds kept pests away. She'd looked it up. Dennis Varley came by once, a few weeks after Sophie had settled in. He sat at my kitchen table with coffee and said he was glad it had worked out. He said he'd worked cases where it hadn't. I thanked him for what he'd done. He waved it off. He said the real work was mine, and I said that wasn't true, and he said, "You got up every day and did what needed doing. Frank, give yourself some credit." He was the kind of man who said the right thing without making a production of it. I thought about Ray sometimes. I don't know if it's possible to grieve someone who is still alive but chose to stop being your brother. It felt like grief. It felt like the kind of sadness that doesn't have anywhere particular to go and so just sits in you, low and steady. Present when you wake up at 3 in the morning and haven't slept well. I thought about the diner, the pie, what he had said about me never letting him down. I wondered whether he had meant it at the time, or whether it was already something he was filing away, some working knowledge of me he was planning to use. Probably I will never know. Probably, it doesn't matter. What matters is this. Sophie turned 10 in December. We had a small party. Estelle came. Margaret drove up from Kettering and sat in the kitchen with her coat still on because she always ran cold and told stories about Sophie as a little girl that made Sophie cover her face with embarrassment and made me glad Margaret had made. The drive. 2 girls from school came and ate cake with the seriousness that children bring to birthday cake, and argued cheerfully about something I didn't follow. After everyone had gone and Sophie was getting ready for bed, she came and found me in the kitchen where I was washing dishes. Uncle Frank. I turned around. She was standing in her pajamas in the doorway with her hair damp from the shower and her notebook tucked under one arm. The garden notebook. She said, "I looked up what vegetables grow best in Ohio in spring." I dried my hands. I said, "What did you find?" She came to the table and opened the notebook and showed me 2 pages of notes she had written in her small, careful handwriting. Lettuce starts in March. Peas can go in before the last frost. Carrots need deep soil, so we might have to build a box. She had drawn small diagrams, which were not accurate but were very sincere. "We can start planning now," she said. "So we're ready." I looked at this 10-year-old girl with her damaged history and her damp hair and her notebook full of careful plans, and I thought, there it is. There is the whole point of everything. I told her we would start planning that weekend. I told her we'd build the carrot box together if she helped me measure the wood. She said she would. She said she liked measuring things. She said good night and went to bed. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time after that. 3 years and 4 months I spent giving everything I had to people who had made a project of my love. I don't have any of that money back. My joints are worse than they were when this started. My savings are half what they should be at my age. Justice was served to the people who earned it, and I believe in justice. But I am honest enough to say that justice alone doesn't fill a house. Sophie fills this house. Some mornings she's up before me, and I come downstairs to find her at the kitchen table with her homework already done, drawing something in her sketchbook, toast crumbs on the plate next to her. She doesn't hear me right away, and I stand in the doorway for a moment watching her. She draws houses mostly. Houses with big yards, trees with thick branches, gardens along the front. She draws them with windows lit from inside, which is something she started doing a few weeks after she moved in. I noticed it, but I didn't say anything. I figured she could tell me when she was ready. One morning she looked up and caught me watching and didn't seem embarrassed. She just held up the sketchbook so I could see. Big tree in the back, garden along the side, windows all lit up. "That's this house," she said. I looked at it. I said I thought that was a very good drawing. She turned it back around and looked at it herself for a moment. Then she said, "I want to add the marigolds, but I don't know what color to make them yet." I told her I thought they were usually orange. She said she knew that, but she wanted to make sure they looked right. She said it in the way of someone who takes accuracy seriously, and I told her to take her time. There was no rush, and she nodded and bent over the sketchbook again, and I went to make the coffee. My knees still ache in the morning. My back makes itself known on cold days. I am 64 years old, and I have the body of someone who spent 3 decades pulling wire through walls and the heart of someone who was made a fool of by the person he trusted most in this world. But I get up every morning. I drive a 10-year-old girl to school 3 blocks away. I pack her lunch without mustard. I am learning, slowly, to grow things. I did it for my brother once, or I thought I did. I am doing it for his daughter now. And that is the only thing I have done in my life that I am certain, in my bones, was worth every single cost.